to first introduce Mr. Josh Wolfe, who is the co-founder and managing partner at Lux Capital, a venture capital fund that is focused on emerging technologies. Mr. Wolfe, in addition to being the biggest sci-fi nerd that I know, is also director at more companies than I can count, including Shapeways, Stratios, Variant, and several others. I meant that as a compliment, Mr. Wolfe. Josh, thank you so much for taking time off one of your a dozen jobs to be with us today.
Chairman Gallagher, Ranking Member Christian Murthy, and distinguished members of the Select Committee, thank you for inviting me to testify about the importance of U.S. leadership in critical and emerging technologies. My name is Josh Wolfe, co-founder and managing director of Lux Capital. We're a $5 billion venture firm with offices in Silicon Valley and New York City. Personally, I was raised in Coney Island, Brooklyn, by a single mom, public school teacher, amidst towering public housing, with a dream to be one day amidst the towering intellects of scientists and investors who showed that American science and entrepreneurship can be a force for good in the world. Today, I have the tremendous privilege, alongside my Lux partners, to identify dreamers who are turning SciFi into SciFact, including critical emerging technologies from AI and autonomous systems to Nobel Prize winning biomedical research, aerospace, and semiconductors. And the hundreds of entrepreneurs that we have funded are inventing at America's technological frontier. We're turning the impossible into the inevitable, and we like to say that we believe before others understand. In Lux, we invest with purpose to secure our life and environment, to supercharge productivity, to enable creativity and free expression, and to reduce human suffering and advance human health. America's open scientific culture and free speech is at our core. We invest in matter that matters, and we don't put profit over principles. Cultures ultimately get what they celebrate. And if we are to celebrate American entrepreneurs at the cutting edge, Congress must support long horizon science, help bridge the world's genius to America and vice versa, and defend America's values from foreign interference. None of Lux's companies would exist without decades of foundational work by scientists who are exploring the vast unknowns beyond the current limits of human knowledge. Now, unfortunately, many of the researchers who are dedicated to extending those limits face debilitating competition for limited NIH grants, short-term funding for defense programs, musical chairs of leadership, scrambled reporting lines, and expiring congressional authorities. Now, to compete with the Chinese Communist Party, we must remain united in our shared pursuit of scientific and technological development to lead the globe in discovery and in influence. And we must show the CCP and the whole world that our diverse voices come together stronger than any authoritarian regime, and our individual pioneers can propel us faster and further than any centralized plan. America must commit to advancing scientific progress and its commercialization by upgrading current funding institutions and building new ones that cultivate long-term horizons of excellence. America can and must do more to give our scientists the freedom that they desperately need to consider the hardest questions and ultimately answer them. The American dream is our greatest asset in the global competitive landscape, and we must continue our tradition of seeking and attracting individuals from everywhere. Many of our own brightest contributors at Lux are immigrants from Vietnam, Pakistan, India, Israel, and yes, even China. And with intention, America should be attracting defectors and accelerating China's brain drain to our national benefit by welcoming the best talent on the planet to the US. Talent, human capital, like financial capital, goes where it's welcome and stays where it is well treated. So we must continue to welcome the best talent on the planet to the US. America's technological advantage is also strengthened through collaboration with our allies and should be vigilantly guarded from our adversaries. While the CCP's Belt and Road Initiative seeks to entice the developing world through centralized planning, simultaneously spreading its surveillance and control with callous disregard for human and property rights, America must seize the opportunity to offer a free and democratic alternative by exporting US ingenuity with talent from anywhere. Through thoughtful engagement and sustained investments abroad, the US can provide a clear choice for nations in search of a more prosperous future. We can't afford to retreat from the world. Our country and our scientific prowess would suffer for it. America's greatest strength is the ability to speak freely, associate widely, and connect spiritually with others without legal constraint. Political disagreements are necessary in a free democracy, of course, but we can all agree that there's no place for foreign interference in our universities, scientific institutions, companies, economy, and political system. The CCP is working to attract American scientists through its Thousand Talents program, hacking America's most innovative companies and stealing our discoveries and know-how while punishing dissidents within and beyond its own borders. In contrast, our values, open ideas, unfettered markets, and fair competition ensure that the best inventions win and America stays ahead. And even as I speak, America's scientific entrepreneurs are inventing a future that Lux finances every single day. I also believe that failure comes from a failure to imagine failure. And to avoid failure, we need long-term scientific funding, contributions from the world's most talented minds who are yearning for freedom, and well-resourced programs to share American values across the globe. By doing those things, we will illustrate the clear contrast between a world led by the United States and a world ruled by the CCP. When I was growing up in Coney Island, I could never imagine the honor of testifying before you and the American people today. It is a privilege to engage in thoughtful and open discourse about the future of American progress. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
You know, before we began, I had a chance to talk to Mr. Wolfe about his upbringing on Coney Island, and he mentioned he enjoyed the Cyclone roller coaster. And I think that it was probably fun for a lot of people who rode that roller coaster because of the unexpected twists and turns on a very old-time roller coaster. And as I think about our China policy and funding for our China policy, I think it's a lot like the cyclone. It goes up and down, and it's on a rickety old framework. And because of that, we're in trouble. And so I think as I hear these witnesses, and I think there's a unanimity of spirit as well as sentiment that comes from them, I just want to point out some of the things that I gleaned listening to both the questions from the people on this panel and the answers that we received from the witnesses. First, you know, we should not be doing anything that would help fund or assist any of the endeavors that the CCP might be engaged in that might harm us or our future. That should be like almost like a do no harm to ourselves principle. The second is we've got to invest in science. We've got to invest in basic science. I think that, you know, my good friend, Congressman Auchincloss likes to bring this up, but I think that repeatedly, I think each of you have said, you need to invest in the NIH. You have to invest in NSF. You have to invest in any and every opportunity for us to gain an edge in the technologies of the future, both basic science-wise, but also in applied research and development. And there I would actually echo the sentiments of Ms. Steele, who brought up a very good point, which is that we've got to go back to being able to expense the R&D tax credits immediately, not amortized over 5 years as they are right now under the Donald Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, but going back to being able to expense it immediately. Third, we've got to double down on our legal immigration system. This is a no-brainer, and I think that each of you mentioned that the pioneers and innovators come largely from both indigenous talent, but disproportionately from foreign talent that comes here, and we've got to take advantage of that. Finally, I think that each of you said we have to have a methodical way of going about and analyzing where our weaknesses are and where our strengths are and taking advantage. And I think that Ms. Gorman mentioned that we should have some kind of a center for analyzing choke point technologies, whether it's, you know, in a ODNI setting, that is a classified setting potentially, or in a public setting. There has to be a way to systematically determine where we are strong and where we are weak, and then to take actions accordingly. So thank you again to the witnesses, and I yield back.